All you lovely people, did you have a good snack? As always, I've had too much, but hey, why not? Again, it's last module, live a little. Anyhow, when we last left Socrates, he had just realized that his wisdom, the Socratic wisdom, consisted in knowing that he knew nothing when it came to things like ethics and morality. And so the restlessness of reason is what leads Socrates then to leave the cave in order to learn and discover truths, deeper truths about ethics and morality. And so the person outside of the cave, when you leave the cave, the person is probably really happy, right? And I like this metaphor of leaving a cave because it's rich with possibilities, because you can just imagine the person leaving the cave for the first time. And once they get used to it out there, it's like you got the sun, which is awesome, right? Shining on you and that warmth. And there's nothing, right? You guys know this. There's nothing like the warmth of the sun. It's just amazing. And then the idea they're experiencing, they're outside, they're experiencing fresh air as opposed to that dank, smoky cave, which is gross. And of course, that I think I love that idea of being in the sun with a breeze on you. It is a great way, I think, to express the joy it must be to attain these deeper truths. And so, yeah, you're out there and you're happy as heck. And so, but the allegory of the cave doesn't end there, right? It continues because the person has to leave the outsider, I guess, return to the cave, right? Because Socrates in this allegory says you got to go back into the cave to rejoin those people who are still living in the shadows. And of course, as we saw in the story, right, the person who goes back into the cave is regarded as crazy or mad, because that person who left and coming back is talking about all this crazy stuff that makes the sun and wind, a breeze, actual trees, whatever, right? You saw the video. I mean, that person doesn't make sense. What are they talking about? And of course, that person's no good at identifying the shadows that are on the wall because you've been out in the sun. They're used to it, so they can't see, as clearly now in this. So yeah, they look crazy. They look mad. And indeed, in this allegory, we get what is, I think, one of the most chilling lines in all of philosophy. If you jump to page 210, right at the bottom there, Socrates says, "As for anyone who tried to free the prisoners and lead them upward, if they could somehow get their hands on that person, wouldn't they kill them?" Kill them. So why the heck go back to the cave? I mean, Socrates here is saying that if you go back, you're going to be thought crazy. You are going to be thought mad. You're going to struggle just to explain this stuff to people who have no sense of it. And you might even risk your own life in doing all of that. So why go back? Why return to the cave if all of that is true? Indeed, if in the apology by Socrates, during Socrates' speech there at his trial, it's pretty clear that they told Socrates, look, just stop practicing philosophy and that's it. You can live. We're done here. So they'll let him off the hook as long as he stops practicing philosophy, talking about ethics, justice, morality, religion. Stop challenging people to think about these things, basically. And Socrates says no. Socrates makes it quite plain by the end of that speech that he would prefer death to abandoning philosophy. I mean, why though? I mean, seriously, dude, they're going to kill you. Why go back into the cave? Why risk your life? I mean, and how I like to think about this is I think the allegory of the cave actually provides a rich metaphor for leadership as well as education. Because I think if you consider what does it mean to be a true leader, I think we start to get some answers here. I like to show people these cartoons here. These cartoons are comparing leaders to bosses. And I like to, have students look at these here. And then I say to the class, what do these cartoons say about leadership? And what I hear back from students is that these cartoons, are where bosses just issue commands and orders. Bosses are definitely not leaders. Bosses don't really care about their followers. Bosses just add their own weight to create more difficulties. Meanwhile, we see in these pictures that a leader is someone who helps out their followers, helps their followers achieve their goals, and the leader joins them in their tasks. Joins the followers in doing all this stuff as you see there in these pictures. And the leader then leads by example, making the work of their followers even easier. And I think the allegory of the cave is like this, about what a leader is about. Because I think you could see that the leaders are the true leaders, not the dictators, not the tyrants. The true leaders are the ones that, do leave the cave and they gain some kind of vision out there, that they come, vision of something that they hadn't seen before. And they want to bring this back down and share this vision with other people, even though they might sound crazy when doing that. I mean, I think like the perfect example of this is considering the life and deeds of Martin Luther King Jr. I mean, I think a lot of people today seem to forget about how radical Martin Luther King Jr. was. I mean, yes, he had a dream. Yes, he had a vision of something grand and amazing. But to many, many Americans, that vision seemed radical, crazy, and plain madness. The American government thought that Martin Luther King Jr. was dangerous. And so we have the FBI spying on him, trying to blackmail him. I don't know if you guys all know this. Just Google it. The documents are there. This isn't a debate. The FBI tries to blackmail Martin Luther King Jr. And in the end, for all of that, Martin Luther King Jr. is assassinated. I mean, that's the allegory of the cave for you right there. That's how similar trajectory that we see with Socrates. So with Martin Luther King Jr., Socrates, others, they know as leaders, as trying to transform things, they know their lives will be in danger. So why do this? And Socrates makes this clear, and I'm pretty sure Martin Luther King Jr. makes this clear as well, but we're reading Socrates right now. Socrates makes it clear that it is the philosopher's moral duty. It is the leader's moral duty to go back into the cave. The philosopher, the leader, the true leader knows they have a bond with those people back in the cave. The idea of the true leader is, I guess, with this saying, there but for the grace of God go I. There but for the grace of God go I. Because the true leader, doesn't think they're extraordinarily special. They just know that what they have is due to circumstance, whatever that might be. But the leader knows that they have something special, this vision that they've attained. And that they can use that. They can be of use to those back in the cave. They can serve other people with this vision. They might be able to transform others into better people. They might be able to break those chains of ignorance with that vision and lead these people to a better place. So the true leader does return to the cave, not to be a petty tyrant or dictator and control those people, but to free them, to enrich them, to transform them, to try to guide them out of the cave as much as possible. So that's what a true leader does, returns and tries to liberate their brothers and sisters from those chains of ignorance. And again, doing that, Socrates is plain. This is the moral duty of a leader. To be a leader is to be a teacher, to be a servant, to transform others into their better selves, even if there is a risk, perhaps a huge risk of failure, maybe even the loss of your own life. Yeah, not everyone's going to be able to make that journey out of the cave. But again, Socrates is clear. Everyone has the ability to learn. For some, it might be easier. For others, it may be harder. But Socrates says it requires a leader, a teacher, a philosopher, I guess, to help turn our heads away from the familiar and begin that ascent towards deeper truths. And yeah, not everyone will make that journey. Either they won't want to, or it'll just be too tough. But the duty of the leader, a true leader, I hope it's clear by now. When I talk about leaders, you don't have to be a philosophy professor. Indeed, philosophy professors are probably the worst of leaders. What I'm describing is far better than most people. I mean, again, Martin Luther King Jr. is probably a great example. But again, the duty of the leader is to try. Take everyone as far as they may go. And I think doing that is the most powerful expression of love and care for others. And just, I don't know how else you can display your love and care for others except by trying to free them, guide them, help them as much as they can. And so this brings us back to Socrates. While Socrates will continue to practice philosophy, even though Socrates knows it will now condemn him to prison and death. But Socrates says he'll do it because he says he's got a mission from the gods to act like a gadfly in the face of a horse. A gadfly wakes the horse up, causes the horse to move, causes the horse to stay in good shape. And Socrates says he's going to do the exact same thing to his fellow citizens. Socrates says he's going to keep talking about justice, morality, values, religion, to keep his people restless, his citizens, his fellow citizens, to keep wanting to search for the truth, to continue being dissatisfied that they don't have it yet. Yes, spark that restlessness of reason to make that journey to leave the cave. Because Socrates thinks there is nothing in this world more important than continuing to think about what is right and about what is wrong, about what is good, about what is bad. And after all, as I told you in the previous video, Socrates was extremely concerned that we have politicians who claim to rule with justice, and yet these politicians, along with most everyone else, don't seem to know what even justice involves. They've never really even thought about it. And so also we have people who claim to lead or live good lives, but they don't know what that means. They don't know what it means to have a good life. They're just doing what their parents probably told them to do or what they see other people doing. They don't know what it means. And that's bad, Socrates says. Socrates thinks there is nothing more dangerous than claiming to know something you don't know. I mean, after all, not knowing your own ignorance can lead to the most dangerous of outcomes. I mean, if God's commands are obvious and without question, we get fanatics who are willing to kill to enforce those commands. Yeah, it's happened, obviously. And unfortunately, though, the jury is not convinced by Socrates' speech here. And so Socrates is found guilty by a small margin, it sounds like. And so the prosecution, as I've already said, demands the death penalty for Socrates. But Socrates is allowed to recommend his own punishment. So Socrates is like, well, what punishment? What do I deserve for trying to practice philosophy? Well, Socrates says then, well, what I deserve for practicing philosophy is to be hosted for life in the Prytantium. I think it's how it's pronounced, the Prytantium. Now, the Prytantium is where the winners of the Olympics, the greatest Greek athletes, were hosted. They received free room and boarding, free meals for life. And this was considered the greatest possible honor for a citizen, to have your living subsidized by the state for life. And so that's what Socrates thinks he deserves. Free meals for life. Especially Socrates thinks he's doing way more good than any Olympic victor does. Yeah, the Olympic victor can run around the field and all that stuff, great. But Socrates thinks he's really benefiting the city by trying to keep the city restless in the pursuit of truth. Now that really seems to piss off the jury. And so they vote overwhelmingly now for the death penalty. And so, Socrates is taken to prison, where a few weeks later, he drinks the poison of hemlock, a very profoundly painful death, by the way. But he is given the chalice of hemlock, which he drinks as required by Athenian law, and dies. Though perhaps, of course, Socrates today is vindicated, since most people seem to know the name of Socrates and something of what that means, whereas only a very few people know the names of Socrates' accusers. And we, of course, continue to practice philosophy today in courses like what we're doing right now, right here. Though we still might wonder why. Why does the study of ethics continue after 2,000 some years? And before I go all into that, I think we can take one last break. We can stretch our legs, relax our eyes a bit from staring at the screen, and then we can come back and we can finish up this module and finish up this course. See you back here in a moment.